Well, good morning and welcome to the Good Friday edition of Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acomb, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio on this beautiful, beautiful Good Friday morning. And a special side note, the last 1 hour edition of Frankly Speaking. Yes, starting Monday, we will be going 2 hours starting at 6 a.m. So don't forget to set your alarm the day after Easter. We're going 2 hours. All right, let's start with some comments from viewers. Thank you for the waves, by the way, this morning. We've got a lot to cover. The star-studded fundraiser for President Biden. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Trump's visit to that fallen officer, that slain officer's wake. We also have just a couple of, a couple New York issues, couple this and that. You know how it is on a Friday here on Frankly Speaking. First, from a viewer yesterday. This is in reference to Assemblyman Phil Palmisano, who I mentioned on the program yesterday, being, I don't know if the term is right on co-sponsor, I don't have it right in front of me, but about getting rid of these squatters' rights, supporting the property owners. I know, sounds shocking. I'm so grateful to Phil for his efforts to legislate for property protection for homeowners against squatter takeover. This is just more insane nonsense that I, for one, cannot wrap my head around. I totally agree. There's actually, out of New York City, a couple news anchors put together a package, and they reported it at the New York Post, that they're encouraging you, if you want to thwart potential squatters, to buy one of those flimsy no trespassing signs. I'm sure you've seen them throughout your life. You know exactly what I'm talking about on hunting land, things like that. Local news anchors encourage homeowners to get themselves a no trespassing sign to thwart potential squatters from moving in uninvited and taking control of their houses. And I'm so glad that Assemblyman Palmisano is actually doing something in Albany. So this is not the answer. This was $3.47. It's a no trespassing sign, said ABC 7 Eyewitness News' Nina Panetta. You can put this on your front door, on your property line. Somewhere you can see it from the street. But this is the catch. Are you ready? Take a time-stamped picture of the sign, because what you want to prove to police is that the sign was up before the squatters moved in. To the viewer's point, you can't wrap your head around it, can you? I can't either. I totally understand. Okay. Politico saying, we're moving fast this morning. Politico saying, have a nice holiday weekend, lawmakers. State lawmakers departed Albany yesterday without a final budget deal. As you know, Governor Hochul extended the budget deadline to April the 4th, trying to use the excuse that it was for Easter. Major issues facing the state, including the politically contentious concerns over housing, crime, and education, will be punted into next month without a clear resolution for Governor Hochul and her fellow Democrats in the legislature. And that's why I thought this article was interesting, because this is calling out the Democrats. It's obviously not Republicans that are the deal breakers and why the deadline will not be met. They won't return to the Capitol, these lawmakers, until Tuesday, with no end date in sight. Now, as Politico says, Albany is a deadline-driven place. Missing Tuesday's deadline to get a budget in place by the start of fiscal year April 1st could push the budget talks even deeper into April. And that's why this gets interesting, because there becomes a complacency. We moved it once, we can move it again. No sense doing the hard work. It would be like if your boss gave you a deadline and said, next week will be fine. What are you going to do? You're going to wait till next week. Lawmakers acknowledge that a psychology of complacency could set in when they lack a target date after Tuesday and prolong the talks even further. A week without a budget might be tolerable, but stretching beyond that could create practical problems, including for school districts who must develop their own spending plans in the coming weeks based on what they expect to get from the state. Quote, if we get into a few weeks or a month, I think it's a big deal. And it changes the public's perception of our ability to get things done in a timely manner, Republican Assemblyman Ed Ross said. Well, there's something to be said about maybe not getting things done in Albany. But anyway, have a nice holiday weekend, lawmakers. And I hope you have a nice holiday as well out there. All right, let's take our first break. We're just getting started on the Good Friday edition of Frankly Speaking, so stay with us. We'll be right back. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I'm your host, Frank Acomb. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV. Big Fox, thank you again for joining us. Okay, so yesterday was the big fundraiser that the media was just fawning over. Well, at first there was, I don't know if you saw the coverage or maybe you avoided the coverage, that there was anti-Israel protesters that disrupt the fundraiser, not just outside, that was heavily reported, but also inside as well. Several waves of protesters disrupted Biden's grandiose fundraiser at Radio City Music Hall, where he kicked it with former presidents Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. One demonstrator, a woman blowing a whistle, holding a war pig sign and warning of nuclear war with Russia, was removed from the event, so she was inside. Did you realize that the president dubbed the event a grassroots fundraiser? I mean, I don't want to go through, I can't pronounce some of the names of some of these celebrities, but if we're told they're celebrities, they're celebrities. Shame on you, Joe Biden, one of the anti-Israel demonstrators shouted. Multiple yelled, blood on your hands. The president asked for the demonstrators to be being ushered out by security to be let go. It did not appear as if they were allowed to stay. I think many of us drew the first question that I asked is, you can say that to a protester, let them go at a fundraiser. What happened to that man that got booted out of the State of the Union, who wanted to talk about his fallen son? But continuing, the armchair discussion between the three Democrat commanders-in-chief was moderated by Stephen Colbert. There were 6 interruptions total during the Colbert panel. Outside the iconic venue, hundreds of anti-Israel protesters gathered ahead of the star-studded campaign fundraiser as part of a Flood Manhattan for Gaza demonstration, yelling things like Free Palestine and Genocide Joe has got to go. There's got to be a better chant at this point, or, cadence and rhythm. It's always that. Anyway, this is an extraordinary occasion because 3 presidents have come to New York, and not one of them is here to appear in court, was Stephen Colbert's uproarious, hilarious joke. No, actually, the former President Donald Trump was at the wake of the fallen police officer from New York. So I'm not sure, and we're going to get to that in a moment, because there's a lot of people calling out the stark contrast between the two presidents yesterday, former President Trump and current President Joe Biden. So that Lizzo played, there was other hosts. I know there was a whole list of celebrities. First son Hunter Biden, speaking of celebrities, was there. And other members of Biden clan were among the more than 5,000 people expected to attend the event. They keep saying it's raising $25 million. Oh, Queen Latifah was there, Liam, Michelle, others, many others. Tickets for the affair range from $250 to $500,000 for this grassroots fundraiser. And the most generous donors received a photo op with the 3 presidents. So there was some protest. Now, of course, Trump tweeted out, or X'd out, or no, what does he do? Truthed out. Hundreds of deranged Hollywood liberals will be in attendance, and they will open their wallets to fund the destruction of our country. Together we can drown out their dirty dollars, but it all depends on how much support we get right here, right now. Remember, my campaign isn't powered by the Hollywood elite writing 6-figure checks. It's powered by you. And you know what this was reminiscent of to me? And we're going to talk more about it, don't get me wrong. It's reminiscent of Trump holding big rallies back in 2016, gigantic rallies, and the media saying, well, it's anecdotal, this means nothing. And then Hillary Clinton having to get big name celebrities to attend hers to play music. I think Beyonce was at one, Jay-Z, those type of things, to get the attention, to bring the crowds in. That's what this reminds me of, because many have said, and there's a piece here that may get to it, that is actually a negative thing for Biden, because Biden could not have raised that $25 million if it were just him. He needs the star power of 2 former presidents and Hollywood stars, musical stars. So they may see it as a good thing because they get that $25 million. That is an impressive number, but it's also kind of got a negative connotation when you really think about what that means to bring people in. As Trump holds rallies and packs in people as one person. Sometimes he has an opening speaker, or maybe a Lee Greenwood will play sometimes, but not anything nearly anything like this. So that is kind of interesting. We're going to talk more about it, kind of dive a little bit deeper into again, the optics, I guess, of all this. So stay with us. We got to take another short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. The last 1 hour edition of Frankly Speaking, and here on Good Friday. On Monday, we go to 2 hours, starting at 6 a.m., so I hope that you will join us. To echo what I was saying earlier about the big fundraiser, boy, the media loved it. Loved showing the pictures. And again, I know I keep saying this. I'm surprised that Bill Clinton has the drawing power, or I guess surprised is the wrong word, because the media should be critical of that. Remember Gillibrand, our senator, disavowing Bill Clinton in his past at one point after using the Clintons to campaign for so many years. So to not bring that up, it's interesting how the Me Too movement was so powerful at one point, and Bill Clinton's name obviously was brought up a lot during that time, not begrudgingly, mind you, but was brought up, and he was kind of a pariah when it came to campaigning. Maybe not behind the scenes, but when it came to big campaign rallies and the like. So isn't it interesting that now, maybe because the media sees the weakness of the Biden campaign, that they're willing to overlook that, something that they championed so long, the Me Too movement, overlook that and stay silent on it, as they can now report on just this fundraiser to end all fundraisers. But as Point Bridge Capital founder Hal Lambert told Fox News, he said, I actually think, to quote him, where is the exact term? Basically, this is a bad thing. Having the celebrities there and having the former presidents there says a lot about Biden's effort to be able to raise money on his own. I don't think he would come close to that number of 25 million had he not had all the celebrities and not the former presidents there. I think it's difficult for him to do it at this point. I think, actually, that it's a bad sign. The New York Post calls it the height of elitism. And surprisingly, there's been a few outlets, not the Post, that doesn't surprise me with the Post, but even the Daily News talking about the contrast of Trump's day yesterday and Biden's day. We're going to get to that in a moment. But first, the New York Post saying Thursday night offered the chance to have glam photographers snap your slapping hands with President Biden or Obama or Clinton for a donation of a mere $100,000. Pretty posh for the supposed party of the working class. Yes, as the president said, it's a grassroots fundraiser. The Radio City Music Hall event featured a three-president chat moderated by Stephen Colbert. As I mentioned, a lot of performances, with tickets ranging up to $500,000 a pop. The campaign reportedly pulled in $25 million before the doors even opened. A nice addition to the $155 million the Biden-Harris effort has in hand, en route to likely raising $1 billion or $2 billion total, not counting soft, dark, and other off-the-record money. That's a lot of cash for fund ads telling regular Americans that Joe's fighting for them. Yes, isn't that interesting? I worded that strange, but that's a lot of cash to fund ads, to buy ads that tell you, that you get to watch, that say, Joe is worried about the working class. He's worried about you, the little person. Too bad the facts say otherwise. With Biden inflation and the killer interest rates needed to fight it, stretching paychecks even harder. Voters are so upset on pocketbook issues that Biden and his team have completely quit talking up Bidenomics. Yes, I think since they bought the huge ad campaign, they've been completely quiet. Because even Democrat operatives were saying, stop calling it Bidenomics. Don't try to own this. Look, we're all for star-filled Manhattan events, says the New York Post, but proudly sucking in campaign cash from fat cats in hopes you can buy your way to victory in November sure seems a questionable tactic. Yeah, well, they've got to try something after the weaponization of the judicial system doesn't seem to be working the way they want it to. But this is the important point in this, especially when ex-President Donald Trump marked the day by attending the wake for police officer Jonathan Diller, whose murder, keep this in mind, whose murder Biden had yet to mention. While Trump was at the wake, Biden mingled with bold-faced names at the ritzy Essex House Hotel on Central Park South. Reveling in decadence while a Kopp family mourns and Americans pinch pennies sure exposes Biden's true base, trendy liberals, in the highest income bracket. At last February's Democratic National Committee meeting, Biden groaned that many blue-collar workers had fled to the Republican Party, saying, quote, "A lot of them came to believe we stopped paying attention to working class the way we used to," end quote. Can't imagine why. And as I said, we'll get back to it and when we come back, but the Daily News, not a conservative outlet by any means, said that Trump stops at NYPD officer Jonathan Diller wake stirs sharp contrast with Biden's long-planned Radio City fundraiser. Now, yes, they have to preface it by long-planned, these type of words. But it is a good point that the Post makes that President Biden had yet to even mention the name. And this is while Trump is at Jonathan Diller's wake. I don't know. I do believe there's a sharp contrast, and I would love to hear what your thoughts are. We're going to tell you a little bit about what Trump said at Jonathan Diller's wake. We're also going to talk about a few other issues as well. Trust me. Hey, this is the last 1-hour edition of Frankly Speaking. Cannot wait for Monday as we spend 2 hours together starting at 6 a.m., so do not miss it. Next week we'll have some guests, but not the first show. I said, you know what? We're going to do this the right way and have it, let's see how it goes. It's going to be all you and I talking for 2 hours and see if we can pull it off. And I am very confident that we'll be able to. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio here on Market Street. So the Daily News, kind of the left version of the New York Post. New York Post is considered a little more conservative. Daily Mail, not so. So a little bit of this is prefaced by, what's the word I'm looking for? Softening the language. Trump stops at New York Police Department officer Jonathan Diller wake stirs sharp contrast with Biden's long-planned Radio City fundraiser. This could amount to a split screen made in MAGA heaven, as Trump seeks to take advantage of the contrast. Trump made little effort to hide his hopes to use the emotional police event to reinforce his focus on crime and appeal to working-class voters as he makes another run at the White House. I think this shows a little bit of maybe their true colors on the left, putting that thought in Trump's head that he's using this wake. I believe it was touching, the photos, the comments that were said. So I don't, and it brought, well, I think it brought some comfort, was the term that I heard, to the grieving widow. Biden is massively underwater to Trump on the issue of crime, and he's trying to capitalize on that, said Doug Hay, a Republican strategist. I don't know if capitalize is the right word. He got invited, and they said he'd be honored to attend. The planned wake for Diller was scheduled just hours before Biden was set to appear at a very different kind of event, a big money campaign fundraiser featuring A-list celebrities like Lizzo and Stephen Colbert. Wait, that's another question. I don't know the answer to this. I could be thinking about the wrong performer because I'm not really up on pop music. Wasn't Lizzo in some hot water at some point too? I don't know the answer to that. But it just goes back to my question about Bill Clinton now being, I guess, a fundraising star again, and the media forgetting about the small window where they were critical of him during the Me Too movement. That could make Biden appear like a candidate of Manhattan liberal elites, while Trump mixes with grieving police officers in a heavily Republican corner of Long Island where the GOP has made gains in recent years. And this is, I don't know if I like the optics of this either. Biden called Mayor Adams earlier on Thursday and asked the mayor to pass on condolences to the family of Diller. Isn't that a phone call to Diller's family, or isn't there a better way to handle that? I don't know. That's not being critical. That just sounded, when I saw that line in the Daily News, it just fell hard on the ears. Trump will be honoring the legacy of Officer Diller and paying respect, said a Trump campaign spokesman. Meanwhile, the three stooges, Biden, Obama, and Clinton, will be at a glitzy fundraiser in the city with their elitist, out-of-touch celebrity benefactors. Okay. Now, how am I doing on time? I'm doing good. Yes, I'm doing great. Keep those comments and waves coming in. With the New York Post, Trump declares the slain police officer's death must not be in vain after attending the wake. In life, some things just capture a moment, and this captured a moment, Trump told the Post as he was leaving the wake. This particular great officer, top of his class, he captured a moment. The perfect family has been so tragically altered, forever altered. I was telling Stephanie, the wife, who's incredible, a 1-year-old baby who doesn't know that his life has been greatly affected by this. I said something has to come out of it, and the only thing that you could really think that could come out of it is we get stronger and tougher so this doesn't keep happening. We have to do a lot of things differently because this is not working. This is happening all too often in America. The only thing we can say is maybe something's going to be learned. We've got to toughen it up and strengthen it up. Things like this shouldn't take place and take place so often. The New York Post, if you haven't seen the pictures, the New York Post had some really impressive coverage of the wake. What a sad, tragic event. And I think, again, places like the Daily News want to put thoughts into Trump's head, and I don't think it was anything more than paying his respects and honoring the family of the slain officer. They want to suggest it was for political optics. Let's accept that at face value. If that's what they want to believe, okay, let's play that mind game. And maybe the only time they're really going to cover Trump. I mean, when you think about it, you actually saw pictures of it, not as much as you saw the hype about this fundraiser with Biden, but they do so little to cover Trump if it's not a trial anymore. Anyway, you're probably saying, yes, something does need to be done about crime. That's why voters are saying it's number one issue in their minds, that and immigration. So it kind of goes back and forth. That public safety, that fearing your safety has become a major concern, especially in New York. And that's unfortunately what Officer Diller's story really encompasses when you look at the career criminal highlights, lowlights of the alleged murderer's career. Well, worry no longer. We've heard this before. Worry no longer about your safety, because CNN's chief national correspondent, John King, reacted to Donald Trump attending the wake by stating that, quote, there's a disconnect between the crime statistics. And while property crimes and vehicle thefts have gone up, most violent crimes are down nationally. And the statistics tell you crime is in better shape now than it was a few years back. However, some of these crimes are so shocking that they stir people. They stir anxiety, and Trump wants to turn that into votes. So again, putting something in Trump's mind there. Yeah, never mind what you're feeling, never mind what you're experiencing. Look at John King's statistics. Imagine being so in bed with a political agenda, meaning an anti-Trump agenda, that you take the moment of Trump visiting a wake of a fallen police officer and making sure that you get your talking point in that, no, statistically, crime isn't that bad. Is that the time for that conversation? Even if you believe that, is that the time for that conversation? As we saw those moving photos, those heartbreaking photos, really. That's the time where John King felt the need to tell you, never mind what you're seeing, never mind what you're experiencing, heaven forbid a family member's experience, never mind any of that. Because I have statistics that prove you wrong. As photos, which I doubt they were showing the photos, but as photos were shown of the president visiting the wake of that fallen police officer, it's amazing. Just to show you how wrong John King is, I don't know why you'd follow this person, but there's out of New York City, City Council Majority Leader Amanda, I think it's Ferreras. She went to X to tweet out a message saying, where are the men calling this out? And it was a post about the man who sucker punched a woman in the face in New York City. But again, the statistics. Well, the answer to where are the men calling this out, the answer would be the NYPD that Ferreras has pushed to defund, handcuff, and shrink. As a council candidate, she tweeted about the need to significantly divest from police precincts and vowed to support the reduction of NYPD's operating budget and partnering alongside the community to create real solutions and justice for New Yorkers. Yet now, Ferreras is looking to police for answers, not violence interrupters or other community solutions. As for, quote, where are the men? Well, last year, Ferreras bemoaned the lack of justice for Jordan Neely, the violent homeless man accidentally killed when Daniel Penny stepped up to protect other strap hangers, where he was the man that stepped up that Ferris is asking about. Penny actually still faces charges in that case, if you didn't realize that, thanks to such political pressure, a prosecution that's sure to make other men hesitate when they see some goon assaulting a woman on the street or on the subway. The alarming trend of violence against women is indeed reprehensible. But if Ferreras and her fellow progressives want to reverse that trend, they can start by reversing everything they've done to undermine the law enforcement and empower the lawbreakers. Exactly. But again, as John King from CNN said, just never mind these violent videos and these violent trends. Statistically, you're wrong. Statistically, you're right. Well, it's the same thing they tell us about the economy, right? Never mind what your bill looks like when you go to the grocery store, when you go to get gas. Never mind your bills that are coming to your house. Don't worry about any of that because Bidenomics and the economy are doing great. And then just to put the icing on the cake, to highlight how much they care about your struggles, we see that $25 million fundraiser and all those amazing pictures from Biden's grassroots fundraiser yesterday. We've got to take a short break. When we come back, a lot more to cover. My goodness, this show moves fast. This is a Good Friday edition. This is the very last 1 hour, frankly speaking, because as of Monday, 2 hours starting at 6 a.m., and I look forward to it. I've adjusted my alarm. I've adjusted my bedtime. And we're going to hit the ground running on Monday morning, so make sure you tune in. We'll be right back. Stay with us after this. A beautiful Good Friday morning as we look over Market Street. As we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio, we received a lot of comments. Let's get to a few of them. Frank, you hit on the reason that Democrats are afraid of Trump. The Democrats can draw on a lot of uninformed sheeple by hosting actors, athletes, supposed comedians, and ex-presidents that were better than Biden. Trump draws in informed voters that want the country to be a world leader and a great again. Certainly not the Democrats' agenda. I do find the rallies very interesting with Trump because he packs them in. I've had the pleasure of going to how many? When did I went to two. One in Rochester and one in Las Vegas, Nevada. And the Vegas one was interesting because that was early on. The Trump train had not really started. It was more to see kind of the show. And it did feel like a rock concert and that's really why at the time in 2016 I wanted to go to a Bernie Sanders rally because people told me it was the same kind of atmosphere there. And for whatever reason, I missed one that was in Binghamton. I couldn't make it. But I found it very interesting. That's why I always thought if you were a Bernie Sanders supporter, you must have been so frustrated when Hillary had the fix in that she was going to win no matter what. Because you must have thought, wow, here's two rallies, big Trump rallies, big Bernie rallies, and Hillary has to get celebrities to pack in a small crowd. But that's why I brought it up earlier. That's what it felt like during this fundraiser yesterday when they were showing pictures. And as that gentleman who pointed out on Fox News said, this is a bad sign because Biden couldn't have got $25 million just giving a fundraiser by himself. He needed, let's just say for argument's sake, about 10 celebrities? He needed that to pack in the crowd of big fundraisers. Just an interesting point. Just something that I found kind of fascinating this morning. Next comment. I like this comment a lot. Frank, statistics that say violent crimes are down are meaningless to the families that lose someone at the hands of a career criminal that should be in jail or an illegal immigrant who should not be here at all. These are violent crimes that could have been prevented. And that is a great point. And that's something that we talked about so often on this program when it comes to bail reform and all the quote unquote reforms brought to us by Albany. Because you think, oh, it's bad enough. There's more crime. There's more, you're seeing it more. You're feeling it more. But every one of those victims shouldn't have been victims. So when someone's let go before the ink dries on their paperwork and they go out and commit another crime, the victim of that crime should not have ever been a victim. That is what is so frustrating about that. So yes, to your point, it doesn't, you can say as many statistics as you want, but the people affected by this, they mean nothing. And I would also say, I think it is very inappropriate that John King took that moment to throw, I guess, I don't know, throw a defense for Biden, or realizing, wow, the optics are bad here. The Biden's at a fundraiser, Trump's at the wake. The optics are really bad. So let me say, no. Biden's actually been good with crime. New York politicians have actually been good on crime. It goes to show you how much in the tank they are with the talking points. They couldn't let those moving pictures go without making that comment that, no, you know what, I don't care what you're experiencing. Crime is just hunky-dory. Everything's good. Speaking of Biden, another State Department official has resigned over Biden's horrific support for Israel's war against Hamas. Horrific, of course, a quote from them. A State Department official resigned Wednesday and has since gone on a media tour, blasting Biden's horrific policy, her words, towards Israel, accusing the administration of enabling a genocide in Gaza. Annalee Shalene's resignation from the State Department's Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor, wow, human rights, imagine, and labor, is the most significant public departure from the department since last October, when Josh Paul, a senior official in the Bureau of Political and Military Affairs, announced he was calling it quits. Quote, for the past year, I worked for the office devoted to promoting human rights in the Middle East. I believe strongly in the mission and in the important work of that office. However, as a representative of a government that is directly enabling what the Internal Court of Justice has said could plausibly be a genocide in Gaza, such work has become almost impossible, she said in an op-ed that she sent to CNN. Unable to serve an administration that enables such atrocities, I've decided to resign from my position at the Department of State. Now, Michael Friend, a pro-Israel activist and former advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu, blasted Shalene for not being more critical of Hamas. Listen to this. This is a very good point from Friend. Good riddance to her. In her column, she did not utter a single word of criticism for Hamas, for the October 7th massacre, or for the kidnapping and torture of Israeli children and Holocaust survivors. The State Department will be better off without her. But as we saw with the protest yesterday before Biden's big fundraiser, he does have a problem with that kind of anti-Israel strain of Democrats. And also, what does that say? Okay, so big protest inside, about 6 interruptions inside the fundraiser. So people spent a lot of money to get in there so that they could boo and hiss and yell, stop the war type of thing. Big protests outside, lots of people, anti-Israel protesters. What does that say about what the DNC is going to look like? The Democratic National Convention. That's going to be interesting to me. I know I mentioned that a lot. Okay, we got to take another break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. Get those comments in. This is the last 1-hour edition of Frankly Speaking Monday, going 2 hours. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio on this Good Friday. I was reading this. I got distracted. That's why I didn't have the music playing. RFK Jr. is poised to be a chaos factor in November. Yeah, that's by Lee Drutman. In a normal presidential election year, an anti-system third-party candidate like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would not be polling at nearly 10% at this point in the cycle, but this is not a normal year. So his argument is people don't like either candidate, and Kennedy's 2024 cross-cutting issue is system distrust. Then perhaps the uncertain chaos of his campaign could bring reform. In many ways, his surprising success is a direct product of what I've called the two-party doom loop. Kennedy, whose campaign is in many respects a product of this doom loop, is a deeply flawed messenger for change. So he can't completely go all in. Still got to use the talking points. Well, it's fine. Okay. There is a op-ed this morning. How am I doing on time? I know this is the part of the show that goes so quickly, and I don't want to run too late. There is a really good piece that we're not going to have an opportunity to get to, but it's by Mike Pompeo. And it's Biden, Bernie Sanders, and other Democrats would surrender U.S. freedom to our enemies. Bernie Sanders laid out the case in Foreign Affairs for America's surrender to the rest of the world, ending its status as a beacon of freedom. Essentially, an America Last approach far too many in this country embrace. It is why Donald Trump's election in November is so important to America and the world. This again, Mike Pompeo. Sanders attributes the world's problems and chaos to a strong America, emboldened by our first-class military, world-class companies, and core belief in economic and personal freedom. It's typical socialist Marxist drivel. To create a peaceful and prosperous world, Sanders argues, America must weaken our military, control private wealth creation, and focus on prioritizing global issues over those that matter most to the American people. Now, you can find this whole piece at the New York Post. But he finishes on this. The United States is a force for good in the world. Given rising challenges from authoritarian regimes in Beijing, Moscow, and Tehran, in response to President Biden's weakness, American leadership is needed now more than ever, not only to prevent further war and strife, but to safeguard the freedoms and security of the American people. I pray that on January 21st, 2025, President Trump will return to the White House and put America back on course. That's Mike Pompeo. He was Secretary of State, if you recall, from 2018 to 2021. We've got to take a break. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. We are back here on Frankly Speaking on Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Quick, I just saw this yesterday, and I'll be bringing it up more in the future. But if you recall, when we first kicked off the show, we had a couple guests in relationship to this event coming up, and I know it's a big event for many of you, so let's put that up on the screen. The Friends of the Southeast Steuben County Library book sale is back again at the East Corning Fire Hall. There are the dates. Again, I'll be talking more about it in the future, but just a reminder, cash or checks only. But you may want to at least jot a little note down and say April 13th through the 20th, the book sale for the Friends of the Southeast Steuben County Library. And I know that's an event that many of us look forward to all year. All right, let's get back to it. What do you think about this? This could be good and this could be bad. My first thought was, yeah, this will show them. But then I started thinking a little bit more about it. So I want to ask your opinion. The RNC is weighing limits on NBC's access to the summer convention. Now, this is because of the fallout from Ronna McDaniel's ouster from the network. Such a move would mark a dramatic escalation in the growing rift between Donald Trump allies and the TV network, a rift that has stemmed from NBC's decision to part ways with McDaniel amid a revolt among top air talent. We are having a hard look at what this means for NBC's participation at the convention, Daniel Alvarez, a spokesman for the RNC, said. Our priority is making sure this is a world-class event that allows President Trump to feature his message and vision in a fair way. Now, that's a little bit of the problem that I have with it. We want the RNC, the convention, to be broadcast as many places as possible. So it's maybe a little bit of cutting off your nose to spite your face, though I like the attitude. I like the giving it back and maybe making some people at NBC nervous. Because as we mentioned the other day, NBC was trying to court a little bit more Republican voters and by or Republican-leaning, viewers, I should probably say. But by what they did, by ousting Daniel, they made Democrats not trust them for hiring her, and they made Republicans realize, yep, there is the bias. But I thought this was a good point from Alvarez. It appears that it's up to Chuck Todd and Rachel Maddow as to whether NBC will participate in the convention, since we just learned that NBC is held hostage by their, quote, talent. I think that's a good point. They really are. NBC cowered to their anchors on that. And as Miranda Devine said yesterday, that it just really proves that the media hate Trump because Trump's good at being the bullies that they are. And she said that in a positive way. Okay, so yes, in the back row, says one viewer. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I at least like the threat. I don't know if we want to lose all that coverage, but at the same time, it's not going to be fair coverage, right? As we saw from Chuck Todd's response to McDaniels or Rachel Maddow's on MSNBC, but just the response overall. So let's take our last break. Then we're going to wrap things up. I can't believe it. On the very last 1 hour edition of Frankly Speaking before we move to 2 hours starting at 6 a.m. on Monday. So stay with us. We are back, Frankly Speaking, here on Big Fox, wrapping up the Good Friday edition here. Quickly, it has been announced that the House is going to send the impeachment articles of Mayorkas on April the 10th, and senators are then expected to be sworn in and seated as a jury the next day, April 11th. Don't expect much from it. Just an update for you on the news. Also, really interesting here. Well, two things. Let me ask you this question first, because I know we've had some people comment on this. Marjorie Taylor Greene, her bid to topple Johnson. Politico says it could blow up the House or in her own face. One House Republican summed up the fear. Her move could deliver aid to Ukraine by giving Johnson no choice but to seek common cause with Democrats. How you doing? Marjorie Taylor Greene's bid to vote on firing Speaker Mike Johnson risks throwing the House back into leadership paralysis for the second time in 6 months, but also holds real peril for the frustrated conservatives who she claims to represent, with some worried she could possibly push Johnson into working with Democrats on Ukraine aid. I just had a photo taken of me. That's awkward. Hey, but that's why we have fun with the window. I'm counting that as 2 waves. If I have a photo taken of me while I'm live on the air, we're counting it. Another really interesting story, and I don't know where this is coming. Well, I know where it's coming from. This from the Huffington Post, but this has got to be the second or third article I've had like this. Justice Sonia Sotomayor is being pushed to retire by legal scholars. A presidential election is looming. Control of the Senate is uncertain. The window may be closing for the Democrat Party to replace the oldest Supreme Court justice nominated by a Democrat president. Paul Campos, a law professor at the University of Colorado Boulder, remembers how this story went last time, and he's begging for a different ending. Quote, Sotomayor has been an outstanding justice, but the Ruth Bader Ginsburg precedent ought to be extremely sobering. The cost of her failing to be replaced by a Democrat president with a Democrat Senate could be catastrophic. Now, I did not realize that Sonia Sotomayor is 69. Interesting that they're pushing so hard for this. Just wanted to give you all the news, give you all the news that we can on this morning's edition. Let's give this a unseen look. I'm going to read this comment from a viewer. The RNC limiting access to Trump events helps the legacy media. They don't want to cover his events anyway, and this makes it look like they are trying to be balanced, but can't because the RNC doesn't want anyone but MAGAs to see the event. Good point. That's where I initially fell on. I kind of liked the threat a little bit, but I fell on what you're saying, Ken, at the end. And I think it's a bad move overall. I don't think the threat does any damage, but I think overall it's a bad move. Well, folks, I hope you have an amazing Easter. I hope you have plenty of time to spend them with loved ones and just remember what it's all about and what Easter is all about. We'll be back on Monday morning, but now starting at 6 a.m. We begin 2 hours on Monday. Have a great Easter, everyone. I can't wait to see you starting at 6 a.m. on Monday morning. We'll talk to you then.